Emil, what a pleasure to finally talk to you. I've really been looking forward to this. You are working on something incredibly interesting, and I would say that would probably alter the way the future is going to look like. But before we get to that, I want to start with your daughter. She started the whole story. Tell me about that.
Yeah, like in most cases, we're inspired, and inspiration comes from the most unexpected places. So yeah, about in 2020, early 2020, I was with my daughter. She was playing with her iPad. She was only 4 years old at this time, and for the first time, Siri pops up, and she asked me, "Daddy, what is this?" And I said, "Honey, this is Siri. She's like a friend. Say hi, Siri, and ask her a question." So as you can imagine, a 4 year old mind thinking, what to ask Siri, and she says,
Right.
"Hi, Siri, do you have a mommy?" And then she says, "Siri, do you like ice cream? Show me your toys." And she started having a conversation with Siri. And at some point, she says, "Siri, I love you. You're my best friend." And she's laughing. And I started thinking about the future and what her world is going to look like. And then I started thinking about technology, the digital footprint that we all have. And I was like, in the very near future, we're going to be able to create Siri like entities that is you. So your grandkids, your daughter, your son, anyone can have an interaction with you without you being in the room. So, what I always say, what started out as daddy's quest for immortality, right? To always give my daughter a piece of me. It actually ended up being something far greater for mankind, where we built a platform where anyone, anywhere, in any language, can basically upload their information, upload their minds, and create a AI agent that is them. And now this becomes your partner for the rest of your life. You continue to train it, you continue to grow with it, and more importantly, it augments you. That's where we think AI is about augmented intelligence, not artificial. So we've developed this platform, and MindBank AI, its purpose is to enhance humanity with AI, and we're doing this currently for individuals, for people who are authors and writers who have a lot of content, organizations that have knowledge that they want to retain within the company and want to obviously be able to scale that. And there's many use cases, right? Just like your mind has many use cases.
What did you mean by augments you?
So when you think about what is our mind, when you think of our mind, right? I always say there's two. We're kind of composed of two personas, right? There's Ari, the dad, the husband, the person, and then there's Ari, the worker, the person who produces things, the creator, right? And all of these different personas are intertwined in our mind, and all of our experiences feed off to support each other, right? So what we're able to do is basically duplicate that, right? And now once you put that into a digital entity, you're infinitely scalable, right? Now Ari could be sleeping, and if I have a question that I want to ask him, I could ask his digital twin, right? Ari may have passed away, Grandpa Ari, and if you want to find out how he met Grandma and have that part of the legacy within the family told from the person's mouth, right? It's a much more powerful story when it's from the person retelling it. But what I mean by augmentation is I don't see AI as it's going to eat your babies and take your job, right? It's AI is going to augment you, and we've had tools in our evolution from the beginning of mankind to
Right.
augment our abilities to produce, augment our ability to survive, augment our productivity. AI is just another tool to augment our intelligence, right? Everything's been physical from now on, if you think about it. Elevators help us go up. Horsepower, it's horses that were pushing a cart. AI is now the brain power that's being put into turbocharge. And that's what we're facing now. How do you bring that down to the consumer? How do you bring that down to the individual? It's a challenge, right? There's infrastructure and this and that and the other, where we've built that infrastructure so anyone could upload documents, upload their voice. We've got a digital twin for you in minutes. How you then continue to train that digital twin in your lifetime, that's a whole different story. How a corporation might say, Ari's leaving the company. Let me make a clone of Ari like entity so that job role, continues to be fulfilled by someone who's had a lot of experience in the company, right? So you see, for example, baby boomers leaving. People have been in the company for 30 years, 40 years. That's something that a lot of corporations are trying to retain somehow. And I think we've built a solution that can definitely help in that space. It takes a maturity of understanding that moment and reflecting on it, just how anyone does about the day. What did I, what happened today that has legacy value? Because most of our life doesn't, right? It's
Right.
just it's just pick up the kids, take them here, take them there. And if you think about the social footprint most people have, it's pretty garbage, right? It's like, oh, I took a picture of my
Right.
taco and got 15 likes on Instagram. Who cares?
Right.
But when you have an interaction with your son or daughter about a bully, or you have an interaction with your kids about, why you divorced your partner, that these deep conversations, have different meanings at different stages in their lives. The story doesn't change,
Right.
right? Your perspective pretty much stays the same. But and that's the power of this, right? Now, what I mean by that is that you need to have a certain level of maturity on the customer side to understand that a legacy is important. What I have to say to my, for my legacy is a value. And unfortunately, many people don't realize that until you're faced with death, very, very bluntly in your face, right? When
Right.
someone tells you, "Hey, you've got a week to live" or something, then you're just like, "Oh my God." Or you're around it often. You know, you come from a war. You've been
Mm.
in situations where you see death quite often. I think those people tend to have a what I like to call the personal expiration clock on themselves.
Right.
Right? I've got an expiration date. You know,
Everybody. Yep.
and I did this for myself like in my 20s. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to die, but it
Right.
means that I'm going to be productive, probably within this window of time. And then you start thinking about that. It's like, wow, it's the older you get, the closer that expiration date comes, and you get this little fire inside you.
Do you notice when you're using MindBank that it's changing the way that they reflect about their own lives?
For myself, definitely. We don't dive into our customer data and kind of understand, right? But I definitely know from two sides. One, personal, right? Self-reflection is definitely an interesting tool that we as a society have lost, right? If you think of prayer, that's a self-reflection
Mm.
ritual that we've lost as a society. Not lost, but at least it's definitely not as prevalent as it was before. And then when you look at, mental health and various studies around the benefits of journaling and things like that for PTSD, anxiety, depression, everything you can imagine, it's shown massive beneficial benefits, to the point that our technologies at, at this very moment is we have a grant for it to be used by the Air Force as a grant study for mental health. Right? It's they're looking at this as a new tool for what's called remote patient monitoring.
Mm.
Right? Because one thing is, as you build your digital twin, you upload data, right?
Right.
But on the backside of that is that we analyze that data for emotions and personality to build out your digital twin's personality, basically. And what you get presented is a dashboard of your mind,
Mm.
right? And obviously, as time goes by, you have ups and downs and sideways, and you can see your emotions and you can see the wave of change. And that's really interesting because, when you look at the quantitative self, we have data about a lot of ourselves, right? Financial data, to some extent, health record data, right? Education data, right? LinkedIn and all that stuff. But do we know how Ari has changed mentally in his life? How are you as a teenager, 20-year-old, 30-year-old dad, and then attribute moments in your life that would have changed your personality? That's where it's really, really powerful from a self-reflection perspective, right? Because you can see your change now.
How have you seen changes in yourself based on this self-reflection process?
So I can tell you a very specific story. So I got this idea from MindBank in January 2020. And in January 2022, we had launched the product maybe, I don't know, 6 months, a little bit more than 6 months before. My ex-wife passed away suddenly. So the mother of that 4-year-old daughter that, now she's 6 and I have to tell her mommy died suddenly. Um, I continued to basically use the platform. I was divorced at the time, so now my daughter's full time with me. So as you can imagine, it was a definitely a tough time for everyone, and it still is, But what happened was that I was able to take all my data and look at the year,
Mm.
and I can tell you when I started getting better mentally. I see it in
Mhm.
the data, right? I can tell you it was like 6 months from January to about October. It was like, right, and around October is when it started kind of going back to baseline, right? Going back to normalcy in some ways, emotionally speaking, at least.
Right.
I can also see my personality, how during that period I was more closed, just not really, let's say, not just much more closed. Let's put it this way, right? So, openness is one of the things we measure, neuroticism, a few other ones. But you can see how my personality went like this in the first side of the period, and then opened up in the second part of the period. So you see openness, you see kind of getting back to better. So what I mean by that is that that's a really clear, concrete use case for me, how I went through that trauma, that loss, and um, and was able to track it, at least visualize the problem, right? And this happened after the fact. I didn't notice, to be honest with you. It's after the fact I noticed, like, wow, I can see my change. That's one example, which is why I think it's very powerful now to start, using it for what I call mental strength, right? And resiliency and like anything in life, your brain is a muscle. It is an electrical muscle, and you need to train it. You need to kind of take care of it. And just like, you think of how much time people spend on treadmills and tracking their fitness and all that. We do nothing for our minds in that respect. So this kind of helps you with that tool, right? From an introspective perspective. But the output is a digital twin of you that anyone can have a conversation with, right? And if you're open to having those tough conversations with yourself and allowing others to kind of access to that, then you've got a digital twin that's very close to who you are, which is why I say that's the persona. But Ari, you might want to build one for work. Completely different data set, different use case, different, you're not going to talk about your personal loss in your business use case, right? You don't have to. You could, but you don't have to. And I think that's where the AI agents start falling, into place, where you have one, let's say, MindBank, but two agents, the personal, the dad, and the worker. And that's kind of the infrastructure that we've built out for the.
So let's dive into the business side of this. How are companies using MindBank today? For what purposes?
So the first and foremost, it's augmenting intelligence, what's called workforce intelligent automation. What that means in layman's term is you've got all this documentation about the business, about a job role. And usually if to service a client or ask answer an FAQ, you have to, query that document or somehow someone has to talk about that, right? So we're able to do, so let's say, I'll give you an excellent use case, a professor. Here's a professor, a lot of knowledge in their brains. They've published papers, they've been on TED Talks, they've been on TV or whatever. We can take all of those interviews and all of that content, all of that things that they've created in their lives, ingest it into our platform. We clone their voice, measure their emotions and personality to kind of give them a bit of some feel. But ultimately, what you have is an intelligent digital twin of that person. So now a student can ask a question to the digital twin instead of asking the professor directly, right? So these are some use cases that we're doing right now, right? So a professor at Northwestern, we've got two more universities that are piloting this product, um, because it gives that enhancement to the professor, right? And it gives access to the student. Because ultimately, what you want is a quick answer. Sometimes you don't need to have a deep conversation, right? And it fills those knowledge gaps very quickly. So that's one use case. And then if you look at from an enterprise perspective, you've got a whole generation of baby boomers that are retiring. So how do we capture that knowledge? So one customer, what they're doing is interviewing these people that are about to retire, and basically just asking them a bunch of questions as if they're a new employee in the company, taking over that role. That Q&A happens. You ingest it also with some company information, product information, and now you've got Ari, who's extremely knowledgeable about that product and that market and that segment, that clientele. So we can ask Ari, hey, what's the name of the wife of our key account? Or, she likes Prosecco from whatever, these little and these that's what gets deals done sometimes, right? That humanity involved into it, right? So that's another use case, right? And then the last one I would say, if you think about it from a customer care or after sales care role, where it's a lot of like customer success, customer servicing, we've done digital twins of a product specialist. So an HVAC system, 5 or 6 different machines, put all of the documentation into it, and had a layer of thermodynamics. So the thing knew a lot about thermodynamics and a lot about the product. So you would ask it a question like, the system is got a red light and I hear a clicking noise. Can you tell me what this might be? And it'll troubleshoot it for you. At least it'll give you an idea of how to fix it, right? So you can imagine if you're servicing a ticket, the technician can walk up to the machine already with a solution, right? And that'll obviously speed up processes. So that's what I mean by augmenting intelligence, right? It's not replacing it, it's just making things much faster and much more accessible.
We kind of think naturally to the negative aspects of AI about, uh,
It's
when
gonna eat
Uber
your
came
babies,
along.
Larry. It's gonna eat your
Yeah,
babies.
I, I there's this I think there's this leaning that's very natural to human beings to think about the negative, right? So the social science that have researched this call it negativity bias, right? It's why news media always, what news media say, if it bleeds it leads, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the stories that catch attention are the terrible things that have happened, and that is human and that is natural. But I think what's beautiful about what you're kind of sharing with us is that there's all this value that it can generate. So all these new employees who don't necessarily have the knowledge, who can ramp up and get basically mentored by the most experienced employee who is now retired, and help them deliver value and help them learn. I mean, that's incredible. Being able to go to ask a professor a question, or it's one person asking one question, but now all of his students can ask any question 24/7. That's incredible. That's true human empowerment at the most basic level of curiosity. So I'm sure there's going to be good and bad, but I think we're hugely underestimating the value that tools like MindBank and AI can drive to us. And at the end of the day, I would argue that AI is just like a hammer, right? You can be a criminal, you can pick it up and you can hit somebody on the head, or you can build a house. But
exactly.
at the end of the day, it's just a tool. It's not good or evil.
Exactly, exactly. And I attribute it to much more like fire. It could burn you or it could give you
Right.
life. It could cook your
It's
food. It's very much. It's got a lot of legs, let's say. But yeah, definitely, definitely. But what's interesting is that I see it. Like I said, I started this in 2020, and in 2020, people thought I was crazy. They were like, there was like, technology is going to come in 10 years, 20 years, like, and it's here. It's here today. Like you can make a digital twin of yourself today. Sound
I,
like you
I-
know,
I'll
know,
I'll
know.
confess. Before ChatGPT hit, I was like, "This is all bullshit. We're nowhere close to being able to do this stuff." But when ChatGPT hit, I was like, the world has just changed, or at least now the rest of the world knows what is possible. Such a
Yeah,
huge
exactly.
difference.
And I was lucky to see ChatGPT and DeepMind. They were like, I started this in 2020, and literally like 2 months
Wow.
later, I saw that DeepMind and ChatGPT both got, which was OpenAI back then, both got $2 billion investments. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to tackle the LLM problem.
Right.
Like,
Right.
these guys are going to crack that nut. I'm going to
Right.
tackle the personalized AI problem.
Mhm.
Because I always say like LLM is not the cure all be all,
Right.
because an LLM is a large language model. English is a large language model.
Right.
Spanish is a large language model. However, our experiences of that language change our output, right? Your education
Right.
changes the way you speak. What country you were educated changes your accent, right? All of these things change your language model in a personalized manner. So what we focus on is how do we make and take advantage of LLMs, which is just another tool, but really personalize it so that Ari's digital twin is as close as possible to him. right? And then add that layer of knowledge to not only an organization, but more importantly to his family,
Right.
right? Because that's a wealth that is always lost, right? And
Absolutely.
now you can start keeping that. And that's why we call it the mind bank, right? It's about storing wealth, and it's the wealth that's in your mind.
I love that. So we talked a little bit about the risk associated. Security of your mind bank is incredibly important. Tell us a little bit more about the risks that you've identified and what mind bank is doing to prevent them.
So from a data privacy perspective and data residency perspective, we've always had the, let's say, the I would call it the ethics and the rules, for, if you want to call it that, of not selling your data, not using your data for anything other than your mind bank, right? It's a tool for you, and your residency, your ownership is your data. From that perspective, we've always had security at the top of our list, right? Because it is about building trust with our user base, trust with our clients. And we've got, as a Microsoft for um, startup, right? We get a lot of support from them, not only from credits, but also from technical support and auditing. The head of our security CTO, he's actually comes from the NSA, so he was a security. He's a security is his backbone, right? Is what he specializes in. And lastly, when you think of where we are going as a company, right? We've always wanted to go into a Web3 interface, right? Infrastructure, so that then even more so, it's the data is in your possession, literally, right? Um, we're not there yet, but we will get there very soon. And also lastly, from a technology perspective, only one person has access to the database right now, right? That's our CTO. So there's no one else that needs access. No one else will get access. And we want to keep it at that level so that very few people have access to it and will ever have access to it.
And in addition to IT security, you've invested quite a bit in compliance.
Because we're making efforts into the health care sector, we have obviously gone into the HIPAA compliancy. The other reason we're half our team is based in Europe, and I'm actually calling you from Europe right now. So GDPR has always been a necessity as well. And lastly, because we want to be, and we're always are actually, a multilingual global company, we're looking at other compliances, because it's not just about HIPAA and GDPR, but it's the CPA. In every country almost, you have your own thing. But ultimately, I think when it comes to a company, the first and foremost, it should be down to the ethics of a company. What is the purpose of this company? Like, our purpose is not to sell you soap, you know. Our purpose is to enhance your ability as a human being to produce,
Mm.
to live longer, albeit digitally, and obviously in a secure manner is most importantly, right? Something that you can also ethically and legally leave behind to someone as well, right? I can imagine a world where Ari donates his mind bank to the
Mm.
world, right? That'd be such an interesting thing. We're not there yet, but I think we're looking at ways of how do we make this a collective intelligence.
There's a lot of famous historical figures with massive amounts of intelligence written, Einstein or Socrates or whatever. Have you done any kind of work to kind of take that massive amount of knowledge and, like, here's your digital Einstein, ask him a question?
So we took Ben Franklin's memoirs. So
Mm.
he has a number of volumes of memoirs, and we took it and ingested it into our platform, cloned, grabbed a voice from that sounds like Ben Franklin, let's say, or we think sounds like Ben Franklin, and we made a digital version of Ben Franklin. And the purpose of that was as a use case of, like, listen, you can do this as well
Right.
relatively quickly. Also, from a historical figure perspective, I think a lot of what Ben Franklin has said in the past is very relevant today. If
Mm.
you look at even immigration, they had immigration issues
Right.
back then. It's really good. Like, because I was reading the data as we were uploading it and kind of cleaning some stuff up, and I was like, wow, he's like basically dealing with the same issues:
Right.
inflation, immigration, like security. It was like exact same issues, just from a different context. So I would welcome everyone to have a conversation with Ben Franklin and ask him questions. Like, he's even got dating advice. But
Just 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 that is incredible, right? To think that I could consult or have mentors from the world's greatest minds. I mean, that's, we think about the internet being such a great revolution that you can Google search stuff and get websites, but next to MindBank and next to this next generation of AI driven applications, it looks like garbage, the Google, right? I mean, you know, I can ask Benjamin Franklin a question, or I can see some website that somebody generated. Like, no, I want to consult with Benjamin Franklin, right? That's where I want to go.
exactly.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
This is Emil. I am so excited to see where your company is going in the future. I think there's just so many opportunities. Your biggest problem is just probably to decide what you're going to do next.
It
Um,
definitely is.
I need to ask you something. You're an entrepreneur. You've been on this journey for quite a bit of time now. We have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs who are listening to our program. If you have to look back on your journey and give one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would say it's more of a framework, at least what's worked for me. And it's something I tell my kids, and I have it on, like, if I were to make a family crest, like this would be it, and it's passion, power, persistence, and peace.
Mm,
And what that means is, when you decide on something, go with it with a lot of passion,
mm,
go with it with a lot of persistence, because it's not gonna be easy. You're gonna
right,
want to give up. You're gonna want to, like, you're gonna fail a number of
mm,
times.
mm,
Stuff is definitely not gonna go your way.
right,
But you need to power through those moments. However, and and then the peace side is, be at peace with whatever decision you make.
mm,
No regrets. Life is full of regrets sometimes, but you have to come to peace with those things.
right,
And that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. Just move on. So those are the four. And I tell my kids this, and the other thing I tell my kids is, at least my daughter, she's the oldest one now. She's 9 and she's a diver. She does
oh wow,
springboard diving, high diving, and stuff like that. So she's a little 7, 8-year-old kid, 9 now, and she's diving from like 10 meters, 7 meters, and it's like, it's scary for me, man, as a dad, to see this little thing jump from that high. But one of the things I teach her is, take a deep breath
mm,
and verbalize, I can do this. Right? That's just that simple of, like, activate the nervous system, calm yourself down, and just go. Right? Because you're going to need to regroup sometimes, and you're going to need to kind of come to grips with things. So that's, I think it was a long answer. There's not one thing, but I like to kind of give it that framework so that people can just think of the 4 Ps, take a deep breath, and just do it. That's basically the recommendation. And yeah, and the last, like, yes, we all live. I was talking to an entrepreneur recently. He says we all live. We're all delusional, and you have to you have to come to grips with the fact that you're a bit delusional. So it's okay, it's all right to be a bit delusional.
Emil, I am so grateful for talking to you today. I really appreciate it. We have to get you back and hear how the company is doing, because I truly believe that your company and others like it are just going to change the world. I
I hope
appreciate
so.
having you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.